Welcome to the Business of Hearing podcast, the podcast for high-performing hearing care clinics that want to learn the strategies, ideas, and truths behind some of the smartest private practice clinics in the world. Now, time for your hosts, Phil M. Jones and Ollie Luke.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you're joining us for our first call of 2021. And it's a weird one because you usually do this, Phil, and you bring along a friend and ask them questions. But as we were looking to plan these calls, we were looking at month on month what are our focuses for you guys. And this month is very much a case of, well, it's a new year, so we need to know we're going to be starting new initiatives. You're all going to be driving new things with your team. We need to know how to start new things. And then similarly, we're running a referral campaign as one of the key campaigns at the moment. And the success or failure of that campaign is very much based on the value of the conversations that you have face-to-face with patients, how they're introduced, how they go, etc. And as we were putting our heads together to come up with a guest, it kind of hit us that maybe we're trying to look in other people's backyards before we look in our own. And maybe the right person to speak around this topic is our very own Mr. Sir Phil Jones. So Phil, how are you doing?
Doing good, thank you, my friend. I'm doing good. I've got a cup of tea. I'm happy.
Good. And I was wondering how to do this because we could just have a good old conversation as business partners, as friends. But I think for the value of this to be the best, we should almost pretend we don't know each other and that we're both going into this as complete strangers and have the best conversation we can have. So I suppose the best starting point, Phil, is given that you wrote a book about exactly where to start, knowing that many of our members will be looking ahead at 2021 and wanting to drive new things forward, but they've got a team in order to drive forward. And of course, all the challenges come there. I suppose from your perspective, what's the best way to start something new?
Well, give me an example of something new that somebody might want to start, and then we'll dive into that.
Well, let's say want to roll out a new pricing structure, but all the challenges that come with that, having to change behaviors of teams, etc.
I mean, if you're looking to be able to roll something out, the first thing to think about is it going to be worth it? And get clarity around what the potential payoff of this change could be. So I'd be looking at, if I was rolling out or planning to roll out a new pricing structure, is to get complete clarity in my mind of why am I doing it? Because if you don't know why you're doing something, then why the heck are you doing it? And that why could well be simplifying things. It could well be that what I'm looking to be able to do is to create a unique position within the marketplace. It could be that what I'm looking to be able to do is to just maximize profit out of existing transactions that are coming through the door. And it could more than likely be a combination of all of those things. So I'd be looking at it and say, have I got complete clarity on my mind of why this change is important to be able to implement, and get as many reasons as possible for why that would be the case? Because then when it comes to two things, one is communicating the why, and then secondly, going the distance of all the steps that need to be able to work through to get it through to reality, is all of those reasons live front of mind and allow you to keep moving forward even after that initial motivation has gone. Because that stands in most of our way, right? It's easy to come up with a good idea. And then you jump straight from that good idea to believing that good idea is in existence and forget about the work that exists in between. So once you've got that clarity in your head of this is worth it and that sits front of mind, I'd probably then peel back a little and give myself at least 3 levels of success. So what is like worst case scenario of me doing this? What am I really hoping to achieve? And then what could utopia look like? What would be like that big dream ticket? Let's stick on this. I'm changing my pricing. Well, what is worst case scenario? Well, worst case scenario is that we simplify things to our provider base and that we can create some uniform messaging so people know what they're paying for what they're getting. Okay, well, why are we really doing it? Well, what we're really looking to be able to do is to create a uniform approach that shows our value versus competition and be more profitable. And if this goes well, it could make us an extra $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. Well, what about utopia? What could that look like? Well, what could happen is we start to get inbound inquiries of people saying, I'm ready to be able to purchase right now at those kind of prices that are being communicated. So we give ourselves those little levels, and then we say, how do I prove concept? So we start small. We say, well, what could I introduce tomorrow or this afternoon or with one person or with the next patient? And now all of a sudden we're in play, and this isn't the thing we're going to do, it's the thing we've started doing. And that change is fairly big as well. It's not the thing we're going to do, it's the thing we've started doing. Now you're in play, the likelihood of you being able to go the distance is significantly higher.
Gotcha. Because I suppose the biggest sticking point for many is this, it's easy to individually make a change or start something new. But how do we do this with teams of providers that are resistant?
This is harder because people do things for one of two reasons, right? They either do it because they enjoy doing it, or they do it because they're going to get checked on and there are consequences. They're the only two reasons that anybody does anything. So if you first say, how do I get people to adopt a change more freely? My first thought would be to how do I get them to enjoy the change as opposed to resist the change? And that's often having the ability to pivot the benefit of the change from your benefit to theirs, and then talk in terms of their interest. So let's just say that we are speaking to a provider about a change in pricing. If you're trying to communicate to them is like, well, manufacturers have put the prices up and, we're getting cut for margin and that we really need to be able to see what we can do for profitability to be able to keep the lights on, they're going to resist that change differently than you being able to say, one of the things I know is challenging to you is presenting the prices of what we provide to our customers with confidence and helping explain the difference between us and our core competitors. So what we've looked to be able to do is to simplify the process for you, created you a series of tools that allows you to be able to actually communicate with confidence in each of these moments so every patient knows they're getting the same deal as someone else. More than that, what you're also going to see is that we've simplified things so you're not having to then sell a charger or sell a battery on top of things, etc. We're just making it a more simple conversation. Better still is in on this new pricing. You might see that our prices have gone up very slightly. We've done that. So what we can still do is provide you an annual bonus. We've done that. So what we've still got is funds in the pot that means we can do our Christmas party. We've done that. So what we can still afford to be able to do is to keep our insurance specialist on hand so you don't have to deal with that paperwork, or that we've done that because it's allowed us to be able to make a decision that is of your benefit, not of my benefit. The buy-in happens at a greater level when you've got the ability to flip your language to talk in terms of theirs and not yours.
And let's apply this same methodology to a real life problem that literally hit my inbox a couple of hours ago. Somebody on this call has got a challenge that their staff aren't following through in terms of asking patients for referrals. Asking patients for reviews. They're not adding as many reviews as they want, even though they have processes in place, because the team just aren't doing their side of the deal. How would you go about introducing that conversation and helping increase the number of asks around reviews, and ideally putting some reasoning behind it?
Okay. I'm going to blow this question up and I'm going to answer it in a slightly bigger way. Those of you that are on the webinar right now should be able to see my screen. And what you're talking about is, how do you as a leader tackle a complex conversation in any way, shape or form? And if I'm looking at approaching complex conversations, they always need three ingredients, and these same three ingredients always exist. And if I'm to share these three ingredients, I'll put it in the form of a triangle because it's a solid foundation. The three ingredients we need are, firstly, the ingredient of curiosity. Behind curiosity, we're looking for some empathy. And then behind empathy, we want the ingredient of courage. These three ingredients in this precise order. So let's take this scenario and say, why do we start with curiosity? Well, if you show up with a telling or an I know best mentality to any conversation, what you do is you create friction. Instantly, you're going to enter into that conversation with that you should be asking for reviews. You should be doing this as part of your job. They're going to find all the reasons in their head and in their heart as to why they can't do that, because they're too busy. They don't have the time, that you're overloading them with other things, etc. That's where their inner voice goes, right? So curiosity actually creates uncertainty. Oh, sorry, without curiosity, you create uncertainty. With curiosity fueling the conversation, what you get instead is you get clarity. You get the ability to be able to start to see the world through their eyes. And you know as well as I do that it's the person that's asking the questions that's in control of the conversation. So in this situation here, if I'm looking to be more curious, why am I doing that? Because I want to understand their context. You can have all of the content in the world, but if you don't understand their context, you've got content without context, which is just noise. So I'm looking to get their context. In this scenario, how do I get their context? Is you show up with a version of I'm confused. I'm confused. You do great work. I know that your patients have great things to say about you because I've heard them say it to others in the clinic. I've heard them say it to me. Like, just out of curiosity, what is it that is happening in your daily routine that means that you can't transfer that great work into a simple ask to invite somebody to be able to leave a review for your work and document it online? What's standing in the way? And even if you get, I don't know, well, what could it be? What might it be? And we stay in this curious play space. Why? Because we're looking to get to empathy. Empathy is something that's talked about a huge amount, but very few people truly understand what empathy means. Best definition I've heard for empathy comes from an author friend of mine that we need to get on this show, actually, a guy called Jon Acuff. And Jon Acuff says that empathy is caring about what the people you care about care about. I like that. I think this is just a super simple way of thinking about empathy. Why? Because it makes you relatable towards them. If you're looking to get somebody to be better at asking for reviews, you've got to be able to see the world through their lens. Stay curious for long enough to then earn the position of empathy that now all of a sudden you're starting to see what some of their barriers are. Their barrier might be they just don't know how to ask. Their barrier might be that they're embarrassed. Their barrier might be that they're blushing. Their barrier might be that they're scared about the questions the other person might ask them back. There could be all these different barriers, but if you're not prepared to see the world through their lens, you don't get to this position of being able to have the courage. By courage, I'm not talking jump out of an airplane courage or like climb a mountain courage or go to war courage. I'm talking about the courage just to ask the important, powerful questions. And you know as well as I do that if you do not ask, you do not get. This exists from the review point of view. It exists from you as a leader asking the people to get you the reviews point of view. You have to ask them to do the thing or they won't do the thing because there are no consequences of not getting checked, because courage leads to action. The trouble is if you show up merely with the courage to ask somebody to do something, you get all of the friction in the world. Instead, if you start being curious enough, get to a position of empathy, and then, and only then, have the courage to ask somebody to take action, you get improved results. How would I ask somebody in this scenario? I'd throw down a challenge. How many people do you think you could ask in the next 7 days to review your work online? How many people do you think? Well, I don't know. Well, how many appointments have you got? Well, I've got 17 patients coming in to see me this week. Well, out of those 17 patients, how many do you plan to do a good job with? Well, somewhere like all of them. How many do you think might have an experience that's worth talking about? Well, somewhere like most of them. So even if you were terrible at asking, if you ask 17 people to review you, how many people do you think might review you as a minimum? Maybe 2 or 3. So would it be fair to say that you could take actions that are within your control that result in getting us at least 2 new Google reviews by the end of the week? Well, yeah, I can do that. Great. Well, I'm excited to be able to celebrate with you this time next week. And let's see how well we can do together. But note, what am I doing? I'm actually working through all 3 of these in a cyclical fashion. Curiosity, empathy, courage. Curiosity, empathy, courage. Curiosity, empathy, courage. And when you do it in that order, you do everything from a position of trust, which is what we need to earn if you want to change the behavior of anybody. They have to trust your ask. And you don't get it without being able to combine those ingredients in that order with different doses depending upon different scenarios. So I know that's a long answer, but I thought that would be the best way of trying to approach that.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure we're going to come up against similar friction with the referral program that many are rolling out, of literally holding accountable and driving those conversations. And I suppose moving on to the referral program, Phil, is the value of this referral program, if it'll work, if it'll fail, or if it'll do something in between, is how well it's introduced to patients, explained, and they understand the value of it and why it's important. So I suppose what would be a helpful exercise is almost to explore what should those conversations look like? Like, how can everybody on this call educate and help their team to have the right conversations by keeping it as simple as possible?
Let's make this as simple as possible then. Is if the ask is for an existing patient to introduce you to somebody who might be a future patient, if that's the only thing, the ask isn't the hard part. The permission to ask is the hard part. Let's bring that into some other context. It isn't necessarily hard to have a first date with someone. It's hard to ask somebody to go on a first date. You see the two different pieces of friction. Like actually doing the work is easy. Asking somebody to do the work is harder. So what we need is permission to ask somebody for a referral. We can do that with a simple sequence of magic words that we lift from exactly what to say. See, a guaranteed sequence of words you can use to get just about anybody to agree to do just about anything. I repeat, a sequence of words you can use to get just about anybody to agree to do just about anything is the request of a favor. So at any given point in time, if you're looking for a window with a patient, then you simply say, could you do me a small favor? And they say, well, yeah, sure. What is it? Now you've earned your window to be able to ask. So where is the window to be able to ask the question of being able to do a simple favor? Where is your trigger to say, now is my time to be able to ask? There are thousands of times to be able to ask somebody to refer you, almost too many to remember. Yet they all fall in line with one very simple point in time in a conversation. And the simple time that they fall into is when the other person is grateful that you've done something for them. And Ollie, when somebody's grateful that you've done something for them, what words do they say back to you?
Sure.
They say thank you, right? When they're grateful. And when they say thank you, that's your trigger to go. So customer says, thank you ever so much for that. Instead of you patting yourself on the back and thinking you did a darn brilliant job, what I want you to understand is what's really meant by a thank you. We give thanks because we felt indebted. That's how we felt. And when we feel indebted, then that's the best time to ask somebody for something. So understand a thank you is a sign to you that they felt indebted. That is your trigger as the best time to ask. So when they say thank you, think, aha, they feel like they owe me. How can I let them off? You lean in with a simple sequence of words like you couldn't do me a small favor. Everybody says yes. You've now got your window that you've earned to be able to ask somebody for an introduction to other people. And you can do that in thousands of different ways. And we've mapped out some ways in our Inner Circle package as how you can ask. But I think earning that window to ask is often more important than how you ask. How you ask is important, but asking badly will get you a better result than not asking at all.
That makes sense. And there's an added element to this, because making the ask of can you give these to anybody that you think would benefit from our services is easy. But how can we do it in a way that puts weight on the patient to feel like they want to do that? And I don't know if I've wrapped that question up correctly, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
I think what you're saying is, how do you attach some motivation to the ask in a way that means that they focus their efforts towards more of the right people and then actually follow through on it? They don't just agree to do it and then do nothing. They actually start to take responsibility for the fact they have a part to play. That's what you're saying, right?
Better than I could.
Well, what I'd probably look to be able to do first is to create a positioning statement that is fundamentally agreeable by everybody. Now, this is often in the form of what I would refer to as an elevator rant. This is you sharing a mutual frustration. In the hearing care industry, what could that look like? You could say something along the lines of, look, one of the things that I find so frustrating in this world right now is people are regularly checking their blood pressure. They're regularly checking their eye test. They're regularly checking their cholesterol. But they fail to regularly check their hearing, resulting in me spending more of my time with people where it gets far too late. Here's my next ask is, could you think of maybe one or two people that you care about? Note that question is a little easier to ask, right? Can you think of one or two people that you care about? They say, yeah, sure. Well, if there's any of those folks that you care about that you think maybe haven't had a regular hearing test, will you ask them a simple question for me? And they'll say, sure. I say, will you simply ask them when was the last time they had a hearing evaluation? And if they answer that question with anything other than like the last 12 months, will you hand them one of these cards and let them know that the next hearing evaluation is on me? And that slowed down dance will have a demonstrably different level of conversion than we're looking for referrals. Our business grows by referrals. Here's 3 cards. Can you give them to your friends and family? And I'm not saying that won't work, but this targeted slowed down thing works. And here's why it works better is the elevator rant gets repeated. Look at the science behind this. When I say, could you think of somebody you care about, you can't help but see their faces. They've just jumped front of mind. You've just programmed them in the front of your frontal lobe. Then what you've got is next time you see that person, you think there was something I meant to say to you. And you dig into your memory bank. What was the thing that you meant to say? Oh, I had a question I meant to ask you. When was the last time you had your hearing tested? Well, why do you ask that? Well, my audiologist explained that, people regularly test this and this and this and this, but fail to regularly test the hearing. And they said they spend most of their time dealing with people where it's far too late. So you see, we're now amplifying the problem. And if we haven't put that context into the conversation first, what does their conversation actually look like? I got this card to go give to somebody about like a hearing test. What are they going to do? You should have a hearing test. It's really good. It's super fun. They like look inside your ear. Like you're going to have the time of your life. You should do it. The conversation is going to be weird, but if you make the conversation fueled in curiosity with a genuine problem attached to it, the card is now a gift and not an ask. And that's the goal we're looking to be able to get to, is to give the patient a gift to give to someone else, not ask the patient to make an ask on behalf of you. And shifting that perspective is huge.
Nice. And I want to talk about front of office team, because I feel like they're either the unsung heroes or play a very critical part that often doesn't get fully realized. In the same way that they could schedule absolutely everyone on your provider's schedule, yet providers will struggle with the patient if the expectation's not right. Similarly, all the objections come through them and they've got to handle them. And I feel they play a very key role. And looking at your kind of sets of magic words, so to say, and exactly what to say, if we could wave a magic wand and have providers start using maybe one of them more often, which do you think could have the most power?
Providers or front office?
Oh, sorry, front office. It's been a long day.
I'm going to introduce probably a set of magic words that is actually going into the rewrite of exactly what to say that is coming out later on this year. And it's a paraphrase of a sequence of words that's in the current book. And it's probably not where you're expecting us to go. For everybody who understands the value that we bring to the people we work with in Orange and Grey, is we work with hearing care clinics that go above and beyond the norm, that provide a level of service that is outside of the norm of others. Common question that comes through the front desk is a version of the how much question. Like they're asked the question all the time, how much are hearing aids, how much are tests, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we often find ourselves on the back foot of that. Earlier on, we learned that it's the person who's asking the questions that's in control of the conversation. So what we really need to look to be able to do is to give front desk a power holding question that means they can come from a position of strength when in some of these otherwise challenging convos. And the sequence of magic words are the words, what do you understand about, or what do you know about? And it means that you can reposition authority. So if in those early conversations, they can use that preface to say things like, well, what do you understand about the difference of working with a professional hearing care clinic as opposed to just buying hearing aids? Or what do you understand about our comprehensive testing process? Or what do you understand about the qualifications of an audiologist versus a hearing instrument specialist? Like there's so many different applications for this what do you understand about question to regain control, because more often than not, you're going to get a response of a version of I do not know much, which leads to the use of a second set of magic words where you're asking for permission again. And here's where you can say, would it help if? Would it help if I walked you through some of those differences so you could make a more informed decision? Would it help if I walked you through some of that information so you came to your appointment better prepared? Would it help if you had an understanding what else you should be looking for in order to mean that you maximize blank? And the combination of those two sequences of words side by side put you into a position where your front desk can inform and educate patients and future patients from a position of strength, as opposed to a position of being on the back foot and a weakness. That's where I'd encourage maybe more powerful conversations from those people without them feeling like they're either being deceptive, pushy, or needing to be salesy.
Gotcha. And is there any sets of words that you would like more providers to start using? Or is there any kind of sets of words that you think would, if we could once again wave a magic wand and instantly have all our members providers start using one or a few of your sets of magic words, what could potentially make the biggest difference?
Let's get back to the triangle I shared earlier on, right? And the importance of starting a complex conversation from a position of curiosity. The more we understand the patient's circumstances in a very holistic fashion, the easier it is to make stronger recommendations. If you think about many of your competitors, they want the results of an audiogram to prove that you have a significant hearing loss, to then be able to recommend hearing aids and then sell you the benefit of said hearing aids. Yet we know that the more we can get in their case history and their background, the more context that we can understand. So a great way of getting somebody to color in between the lines on an answer and give you more comprehensive answers to questions is all in a simple setup again, a simple preface of a setup of words. And one of my favorite sequences of words as a setup to get people to tell you more about something are the words, help me understand. You know, help me understand a little more about some of the circumstances that you've been finding it difficult to hear. And what else? And tell me some more about that. And help me understand, when was the last time that you found yourself in a situation like that? So let's build on that a second. Here is a 3-part questioning technique that can put you into a position where you earn a bigger problem to solve, which is often what we're looking for. If you use the help me understand preface and then you add to it 3 little components, one is, when was the last time? So when was the last time you found yourself in a situation like that? They tell you very specifically. Then you scale it with how often. How often has that been a challenging set of circumstances for you? And then the third part is, for how long has this existed? What you've now got is a problem worth solving. No, help me understand about some of the difficulties you have when you're hearing, etc. Well, when I'm in a restaurant or when I've been out in a busy place, I've just been really suffering with background noise. I've been finding it very difficult to be able to understand people in those environments, yada, 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 yada. Okay, tell me some more about that, right? Oh, when was the last time? See, that framework then means that they tell me some more about that. And how often? Well, like this is like an every week thing. And for how long has been this an issue? Well, it's been since like 2006. All right. Well, it sounds like we're probably in the right place to start doing something about it right now. You see how we've got permission to deliver a treatment plan before we've even asked for permission to deliver a treatment plan, because we've created a problem worth solving that started with the words, help me understand. Then when was the last time? Then how often? And then for how long? That ability to stay curious for long enough at the front end earns us the right to make stronger recommendations later in the convo.
Nice. And let's change the conversation slightly, because I know that a lot of people listening right now will be receiving phone calls from patients that are wanting to reschedule due to the craziness of the world. And if you were picking up them calls and dealing with them conversations, how would you be handling them in the correct way, of course?
Well, let's throw out the idea of correct way. I think that this desire to believe that there's a right way and a wrong way of doing anything means that far too many people live in paralyzing fear of doing it wrong, so they do nothing, or that they just feel like whatever they're doing is wrong or done badly. And that's no way to be able to live. So you can ask me, how would I deal with it? And I can answer that question for sure, but I don't know whether I can say the right way or the wrong way. What would be an example that you'd be looking for me to address about somebody calling into a front desk right now? Are you looking at somebody who is potentially looking to cancel altogether, to reschedule?
Let's role play it.
Okay, let's do it.
Ring, ring. I'm calling you.
You're calling me? Oh,
yeah.
Hello.
Hey, I'm looking to push my appointment back. My grandson doesn't want me to be leaving my house right now.
Oh, really? What makes you say that?
The craziness of the world, it's not safe right now.
Okay. And what day was your appointment scheduled for?
The 20th of October.
Okay, and who were you planning to see?
Dr. Smith.
Okay. And that was on the 20th, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. No, I agree entirely. I mean, it's a crazy world out there right now. What do you know about some of the processes and procedures we've put in place to maximize the safety and security of not just our patients, but every member of staff too?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, would it help if I just walked you through all the ways that we go to make you as safe now as we've ever made people?
Sure.
Okay. Well, how do you think your son would feel if he knew that when you were to arrive at the clinic, that you were the only person that was going to be in the clinic at that period of time?
How many people will I see in the clinic? Like, how many staff will I end up seeing?
Well, in their given circumstances, if it's Dr. Smith they're seeing, it will be Dr. Smith that they're seeing. So for you, that will be some time independently with Dr. Smith. But what difference would it make if not only did you know that you would have a private and safe and clean, hygienic environment just with you and Dr. Smith, but there would be nobody else in the waiting room ahead of you, and that between your appointment and the appointment that happened prior to you was a thorough deep clean plus a significant period of time between those two appointments? Do you think that would give him some more confidence in the fact that the appointment was safe?
Yeah, gotcha. You've put back me into a corner where I'm coming for an appointment, Phil.
I'm still going. I'm not done yet. So let's keep looking at this. So what was the primary reason that you were looking to come and see Dr. Smith in the first place?
I'm due my annual hearing test.
Okay. And help me understand from your point of view, what kind of challenges have you been noticing in your hearing over the last 12 months?
Not too much difference, to be fair, since the last time I came.
Okay. So are there any challenges and obstacles that you are looking for Dr. Smith to give some particular attention to in your visit?
No, not really. My existing devices are working fine. Everything's, I think, is working as it should be.
What I'd probably end up doing here, if this patient has no immediate need to come in and I feel confident that they are in modern, accurate devices that aren't causing a huge concern, I'd probably just introduce the idea of the fact that if a concern comes up, here's how we can help you with teleaudiology. Here's how something can be dealt with if there is an emergency environment. And perhaps you're right, if you do have those reservations, then what it might be best to be able to do is for us to be able to delay this appointment with Dr. Smith at this moment in time. However, should you change your mind, please know that it is safe. It is great for you to be able to come in, yada, 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 yada. But what I'll do is I'll drop you a call in 3 months and find out what's changed. I'd probably take you there. But what am I going to do? I'm going to box off the safety. I'm going to then revisit what was the primary reason of the visit in the first place. We can now make an assessment of to say, is the risk worth the reward? Now, if what you were saying to me in that environment is, sorry, what? Say that again. And you're explaining in the fact that you were having difficulty being able to communicate with a loved one from afar and sharing the fact that you weren't getting the result, or things were uncomfortable, or you weren't sleeping, or it perhaps tell me that the appointment is worth following through on, and therefore we need to give confidence and reassurance that they're stepping into a safe environment.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. That was the best acting I've ever done, by the way.
I think you should stop being an actor. I think that should be the best and only.
I think that will stay there. Again. But I think this is a real world concern right now, and I'm hearing it more and more. And is there any other advice you'd give around this? Because I think it can go several ways depending on the reason. We went down kind of one track there, but it can be people concerned about their own safety, not the grandson caring about them. It can be, I've watched Fox News and my front door's about to get kicked in, and it's a crazy world.
Let's try and search for some principles that can be adopted for all of those types of conversations. Is the first thing that I'm looking to try and do is I'm looking to try and slow it down. So if you take the example that you just gave me, is I'm looking to just clarify some information. When was it, with who, what details, confirm some addresses, etc. Why am I doing that? I'm getting us both used to hearing each other's voices. I'm taking any venom out of a conversation. I'm finding a level jumping off point, and I'm finding that we have a lot of stuff to agree on. Creating versions of that's right, got it, yes, great, thank you, right? So in that early, let's clarify some details piece, we've started to build a position of rapport. What I'm then going to ask is a version of like something around concerns, which is a version of tell me some more about, or help me understand, or, you know, what's currently giving you reservations around coming in. But I'm asking the question very directly, but I'm asking it in a gray way. Not why don't you want to come to your appointment? What's giving you reservations about coming? See how it's in the gray space, not in the black or white space. So a big, wide open gray question, because I want them to tell me as much of their story as possible. Then when they've told me their story, I can ask a would it help if question. Now, if I ask would it help if, I'm going to get a guaranteed version of yes. And I'm going to then position all of the things that we've done to help in the form of a question. What would your son think if he knew? How might it change your mind if you were aware of? What impact could it make if? See, all these hypothetical questions that are positioning the value steps that we put into place to mean that actually the appointment might be a better idea than you thought it was. Having laid out all those hypothetical questions, my expectation is they're now seeing the world slightly differently. So what I'm going to then look to be able to do is I'm going to loop back round to the existing problem that prompted the need for the appointment in the first place. And I'm going to check that that problem still exists and to what scale. And then I'm going to ask them a challenging question at the end of that has them to choose which one of these paths of resistance is easier. So what's going to be easier for you? Continuing to struggle to hear on a regular basis and boom, 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 or helping your son understand that you're coming into a safe and secure environment?
So I'm going to put you on the spot a bit here, Phil, because I think everybody listening to this will feel like that makes sense. And I could, if I answered these calls and dealt with it, I'd probably be able to do a good job. The challenge is this kind of formula that you devised almost needs relaying to the people answering the calls.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, is there any way to almost formalize this and build it into something that is easy to remember or can be screenshotted, or we can create a graphic to send out that will help the people who will be answering these calls, to almost give them the tools?
I mean, we could certainly take what's just been mapped out there and turn it into a pretty graphic that is a formula for somebody to be able to run towards. Yeah, that's no issue whatsoever. How do you make it stick? Repetition, practice. Let me show you. And one of the greatest things that leaders can do is to prove their own vulnerability. And that might be, the game has changed. It's been a long time since I've done anything like this. Why don't I have a go at the next 3 calls? And being prepared to put yourself into a position to say, what do we play about this? Or you create a fixed window of opportunity and you make a game about it. You run a little micro training session in the morning in a huddle before the doors open. You then say, we're going to try this approach for the day. And then we're going to talk tomorrow morning and find out what we learned about it and see what we can do to be able to refine it. And you're going to keep this as a focus for a week or something, right? But many leaders make the mistake of trying to change behavior by telling somebody to change their behavior once. That would never work with a child, right? You know, if I've got Kensington and Violet here at 21 months old and I'm saying, stop chewing your fork when you're eating your food in your high chair, I can't expect them to then, not next time they're in the high chair, like the taste of the plastic on the wrong end again, right? Like it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we have to keep repeating that that is the wrong way to be able to do things. Use the sharp end, stagger your food, eat the food, not the fork, you stupid girl, right? Like that conversation is on repeat. That's the one that's in my head, not the one that comes out loud, right? The one that comes out loud is softer. And this is how we develop our people. It's through repetition, through focused effort, through understanding that better is possible. When we do role plays like this, is note that all I'm looking to be able to try to provide isn't necessarily here's how you do it. It's a poster of possibility. How could this look? And sometimes that's our job as leaders as well, is to build posters of possibility of what could be achieved. and know that many people will look to rise to a standard of better if you show them a standard of better. That's Roger Bannister 4-minute mile stuff. It's things we've seen repeated time and time again. If you show enough people that an improved result is possible, they will figure out a way of achieving that improved result using any resources you make available. You try and push people through resources and processes and ways of doing things, they'll find reasons why that doesn't work. What are we back to again? Curiosity and empathy before asking somebody to have the courage to change.
Nice. And it's not been announced, but you're working on a special copy of your book at the moment.
True.
What's the timeline on that? I'm intrigued for our members to learn more.
Exactly what to say for hearing care will be released, announced, available to order from, I think, like the 23rd of March. So certainly by end of March, that is going to be available of 2021. So a fully customized edition of Exactly What to Say that is purely meant for providers and front desk in all areas of hearing care conversation. So if you're listening in the chat, let us know your thoughts about that being a customized edition just for this industry.
Nice. And I'm intrigued because I think many of our listeners may have read your book, may not have, and may be familiar. Which are some of the, I suppose, the key changes which apply this much more towards the hearing care, or is it more example based?
It's everything I'm talking about with context. So it's considering the scenarios that exist in the hearing care world and then applying those principles directly towards them. It's taking away any of the internal work of that won't work for me or how would that work for me, and giving consideration to it only being relevant in a hearing care environment. And a few new examples that are laid in there too, a few new sequences of magic words. So it's about making it for you and only you, and taking away a ton of the work.
Nice. And we're doing some extra stuff there with every, I suppose, set of words. We're going to be pulling a swipe file together of real life examples of how them words have been used in specific industry focused marketing pieces, etc., which should be
and written word in response to patient emails or negotiating with suppliers, and and looking at that whole area of running a hearing care business, not just the point of transaction of getting somebody to part with $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for devices, but the business as a whole.
Nice. And guys, if you get any questions, feel free just to bang them in the chat, and we can get these answered. So Phil, from your perspective, what have we missed? What are some of the key parts of your work that will be valuable for this conversation?
How long we got? A few things I would say is I've been an entrepreneur for nearly 20 years. I've held the business that I hold right now for nearly 14. And in that time period, it's never really remained as the same business for any sustained period of time. There's been permanent reinvention. And there's something I share with a lot of people when they think about leading a business, and I don't think I've ever shared it with anybody in the hearing care industry. And it's a simple phrase that if you're looking to successfully lead a business, you should always be looking to lead two. What do I mean by that? I mean that the two businesses you should be looking to have focus on is, one is the business that you're running, and two is the business that you're growing. Now, drawing a line between those two things gives you freedom to be able to innovate and play. How do you apply that towards a hearing care practice? Well, the business that you're running may well be taking care of your existing book of patients and ensuring that they're fit for upgrades and managing their scheduled maintenance plans and looking forward to be able to deal with the patients that are sent to you through third parties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the business you're running, everything that exists right now. But if you decide to focus 20% of your effort on the business you're growing, what could that look like? This is now commission to play. That could be, an OTC-focused side hustle business through a web portal. It could well be that you're looking to be able to add service-based or productized service-based offerings with more comprehensive level of testing, or you're looking to be able to reach into an employee market where you're going to provide hearing care solutions for 3 big employers within the locality, et cetera, but almost create a new business within your business that you can grow from ground up. Then if that becomes more successful, that then ends up becoming the business that you're running. freeing up more time to then look at what is the business that you're growing. And this is how permanent innovation happens. And failure to do that means that one day the business you're running is no longer relevant and you haven't got something new to be able to step into. And if I share with you how that journey's played out for me, even in this business, is I started by having, a consulting business that I was running and a sales training business that I was growing with one-day workshops and coaching off the back of that. That grew to become the business I was running. My consulting business then dropped down. My sales training business then became a speaking business, is the thing that I was growing on the back of my my training business. My speaking business grew to a point that my training business now was no longer my core business offering. My speaking business was. What was the business I was growing when I was with my speaking business in this lane? It was my books business. As I sit here today through COVID, my books business has provided a steady revenue for me and my family, meaning that I didn't need to get on a plane or go to work with any clients face to face without any worry, because my books business was the business I was running. What was the business that we could lean into growing, right? It's forever changing, and it allows you to step like this in a zigzag fashion towards your own version of growth. So if you don't have clarity at this moment in time between the business you're running and the business you're growing, then what you do is you become constrained by thinking everything is one business. It's an interesting concept to play your head around, but the second you can start to draw those hard lines, you end up with permission to play, because you have less to lose, because you ring fence your core business as the business you're running and give birth to something new from a new start line. And then you can play with that from an innovation point of view. Ollie, does that make sense the way I've described that?
It makes sense. I'm trying to think, is there any examples that jump to mind with a hearing care focus? Because in many ways, your kind of story of kind of bouncing to different models is, hearing care's kind of got constraints. It's a similar delivery to the same people, but there's so many ways to do that. I'm trying to think if there's any examples, and I'm sure there's countless.
Well, even as simple as your existing body of patients is the business that you're running. The business that you're growing is the new patients that you don't have any access towards yet, that don't know that you exist, that you do not have currently correspondence with. That would be a way of being able to draw a very simple line in it. What am I doing to be able to serve and maximize revenue opportunities and service opportunities with my existing book of business? And then what steps am I taking to give birth to a new body of business of 100 brand new patients? That would be a very simple line between these two things. Is I've got my new patient acquisition business over here. I've got my high level of customer experience business with the patients I've already acquired. Another way of being able to draw a line around it could be, well, everything that I'm doing right now is my core business. And then the business I'm growing is my insurance business. We do very little with insurance right now. So I'm actively growing my book of insurance business, and I'm going after that as new co, and I'm thinking about it like as a new business. Another example could be the business I'm running is the 2 offices I have right now. The business I'm growing is the brand new satellite office that exists the other side of town that I'm thinking of opening up. Another way of looking at it could well be, well, the business I'm running is my brick and mortar business. The business I'm growing is a teleaudiology business that works remotely and is existing under a different brand name, yet still using my same license. So what you're doing is giving yourself permission to give birth to a new little side hustle that is in parallel or in some way connected to your existing offering. But by seeing it through the lens of it being a new business that I'm growing, as opposed to an area of my existing business that I'm growing, you lose the vulnerability.
Makes a lot of sense. Any other key things that you think we've missed? Anything from your books, anything that is a key lesson which we can apply?
Well, is people is probably a big thing. Is we've all heard on numerous occasions that we are, the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. These things are all being talked about. And that's a great set of beliefs in principle, but in practice it's a lot harder to be able to put in, right? Because sometimes the people that you spend the bulk of your time with are for completely different reasons. Like, what am I going to be? The sum of some of the average of my 21-month-old daughters? Like my wife and the pool guy? Like is that what it's going to be? Or do we have to start to be able to think about the people that input into our life all hold very different roles? And this was a giant lesson. And we actually talk about it in exactly where to start, but I don't think I have a copy of the book in this office right now. But I identify the key types of roles of what we need in our life and who those people are and what roles they play. And when you think about roles and responsibilities of people, you start to be able to think, can I build my success squad? And I think what we all need is we all need coaches. We all need mentors. We all need cheerleaders. We all need professional advisors. We all need friends. We all need to be able to have people in these different categories of people. And my encouragement to everybody would be to have a life laundry, by which I mean, if you have people in your life that aren't serving you in a role that you've decided adds value, you might need to get them out of your life, or at least get them out of your vision. What you might also need to look at is what role do certain people play in your life? I'll give you a very simple example is, like I want my mum to be in my life, but if I give her the role of business coach, she ain't going to be performing to her best. If I have her be professional consultant to ask the questions of me that is going to help me to be able to grow professionally, she ain't going to be the right person. But if I'm looking for a cheerleader or somebody that's always going to be able to have my back or somebody that I know can make me smile with small talk, my mum can do that job to an exceptionally high standard. So in the same way that you have, like through your PCCs or your front desk, or you think about job roles and responsibilities, is can you start to think about all the people in your life and get clarity as to what are they for? Are they in their lane? Are you using the right people for the wrong jobs to provide you the mental health, the well-being, the support infrastructure that you truly need? And if you start to identify that you have vacancies, is how can you use this next 12-month period of time to recruit the vacancies of the people that you're missing in your life to help you feel the way that you need, know the things that you need to know, and be balanced about the direction you're looking for. So actively build your success squad by having right people in right roles in all areas of your life. And that might end up being 20, 30, 40, 50 people, but they've been hand selected and up here, then what role they're in and what role is expected of them to be able to deliver upon. Ollie, does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I think the life laundry thing's interesting because it doesn't only include people. I've had to just stop using social media because all of a sudden I'll find myself, without realizing, staring at a screen with my 4-year-old asking me questions. And all of a sudden you're like, why am I so emotionally connected to this app that doesn't serve me, but just makes me feel shy? So that's interesting. Or just a bunch of things like where do bad negative attention flow? So I think that's
and you can do something with that too, just from a time management point of view. And there's an equation that I share with a lot of people that I think you should all know the answer to. And it's a simple equation and everybody can do this. The first number you need to know is how much money do you want to make in the year of 2021? So how much money do you want to make in personal income? The second number that you need to know the answer to is how many weeks of the year do you want to be working? So there's 52 weeks in a year. Take away any vacation times that you want to have permanent downtime. Take that from 52, you've got your number. And then the third number that you want to write down is how many hours do you want to work in those weeks? So you've got how much money do you want to earn, how many weeks of the year you're going to be at work, and how many hours you're going to work in those weeks. Once you have those three numbers, you can perform a really powerful equation. And the equation is taking the first number, dividing it by the second number, and then dividing it by the third number. When you do those three numbers divided by each other in that order, what you find out is a magic number. The magic number you find is your hourly rate. You find the sum of money that you need to get back for every hour that you work to be paid the sum of money that you would like to earn, taking the vacations that you wish for. That's what you find out. And it means that you start to be able to use that number to make more informed decisions. So for example, let's take your social media piece. If you work out your calculations that says an hour of you at work to deliver the outcome you're looking for is $200 an hour, you can ask yourself a question: would I pay somebody $200 to mindlessly browse Facebook? If the answer to that question is heck no, then understand that you're stealing that $200 from yourself. Like it becomes a way to be able to choose, am I doing the right things with my time? Am I delivering high payoff activities? Or am I just kind of going through the motions? It also allows you to think about how does that number apply to my pricing when you're thinking about putting service bundles together. And the general rule of thumb when running a business is you spend about a third of time doing the thing that you're paid to do, about a third of your time getting to be able to do the thing that you're paid to do, and about a third of your time doing stuff you wish you didn't have to do, right? Like that's the general rule of thumb. So if you want to create a wholesale charge out for your hourly rate so that you've got a chance of being able to make a game of this, is times that number by 3. So while if you wanted $200 an hour for your time, then my charge out rate per hour would be $600. And I've now got a wholesale productized hour of time that if I'm looking at it and say these hearing devices with this markup with 6 hours of my time, I've got a minimum number I need to be able to ask for that, for the math to be able to work on paper. Yeah. What's the point? The point is if something doesn't work on paper, it doesn't work in reality. And blind optimism, albeit something that feels good most of the time, is never, ever, ever as practical as useful truth. And that's what I look for more people to get to as well, even in their mindset, is not blind optimism or paralyzing fear. It's useful truth on whatever it is you're looking to be able to do, and then use that useful truth to be able to make more effective decisions. And on that effective decision thing is like, think in terms of words again, is something we talk about in exactly where to start, is the difference between efficient and effective. And the simple way of looking at the difference between those two things is being efficient is doing the thing right, and being effective is doing the right thing. So these are things that we should start to be able to look at as business leaders, of saying is, are there things that we are doing remarkably well that we shouldn't be doing at all? And can we replace those things with more of the right kind of things that are driving the behaviors or actions that we should be looking for? And that might be, well, I'm remarkably efficient at putting my chart notes into beautiful alphabetical order, and I would be better spending that time picking up the phone and speaking to my tested not sold patients and finding out what they did instead. Right? Like that might be a better trade-off, is that I could pay somebody $15 an hour to file my chart notes. I can't find anybody in the organization to have a meaningful conversation with a patient who didn't buy from me. Which one of those two is worth $200 an hour? Probably the phone calls to be able to find out why people chose to go in a new direction.
So true. You know, I think there's thousands upon thousands of dollars an hour jobs in all our businesses, yet we often get swept into the jobs, which is cleaning the toilets at the end of the day, and kind of, you know, using that analogy. It's it's remarkably true. So guys, we're coming to the hour mark. Any questions of anything that's been mentioned before we come to a close?
It's where everybody remains quiet. Everybody's like, I don't want to speak up. See, if this was a room, we'd be able to like prod and poke people into asking questions.
Call on people and put them on horrific positions. Well, based on that, I think
Jana's got a question. I like to be able to rely on Jana for questions. So how do you get on your team to ask for the referrals? We talk about it, we never make the habit. Jana, you can do that in thousands of different ways, but here might be one place to start. And I want a yes/no answer from you at this point is, do you have a scoreboard, a leaderboard, or anything that is visual within your organization for the person who's the best, and then ranking everybody in your organization to the quantity of directly referred patients they bring through your clinic?
Yes.
How visual is it? How do people feel about where they stand on this? They post totals daily, but where are those totals seen? Are they physically up on a board that is in everybody's visual environment? It's above their heads. Okay, so you've got that visual in place. Is what do you do to be able to reward significant amounts of improvement of somebody who's gone from nowhere to somewhere in the quantity of referral business that has come through? Other way that you can go at this is when a patient is referred, What can you do to capture their story so that their story is something you can use as an internal convincer to the other people who aren't seeing the value of referrals, knowing how much better it was for this patient to feel they were coming to a trusted source. Brag board in the lunchroom. In the past, we've also had gold trophies I'd pass out. Is if there is a change that you want to make that isn't making it, you've either got to dig into some of the key pieces of friction that are existing within those individuals that are either confidence or skill focused, or you just haven't made it important enough. It's one of those two things, right? It's either there is like a skill or a confidence issue existed within the individuals, or you haven't made this important enough. So maybe decide that you're going to give this, a giant new focus for a month, for a week, for a 6-week period of time. Put competitions around it, like go as big as you possibly can. Think you're replanning your wedding again and put all the details into it towards that. Also accept that none of these jobs are ever done. You're never going to tick this box of saying I've sussed it for referrals and I don't have an issue again. It's a ball that needs juggling. I heard a great quote the other day, and I can't remember specifically who it was from, but it wasn't mine. I should find out where this quote comes from and we'll get it in the show notes. But somebody said like a quote of like life is is about juggling different balls, but some of those balls are made of plastic and some of those balls are made of glass. And I like that thought process, is that we're always juggling balls, but you have to decide which ones are plastic and which ones are glass. And if referrals are a key part of your business, is that something that everybody understands is a glass ball that you cannot drop? And that alignment of saying what are non-negotiable actions of things that we need to give high levels of importance to at all times, and what are areas that we can accept that we don't plan to drop the ball, but if we do drop the ball, it's okay because we can pick it up again at a later date, might be able to help people in their own prioritization of where they should look to be able to focus. She's like, now I'm sick of kid gloves, just do it. Yeah, eyes on the fragile balls. Like I'm imagining you saying that with a cocktail in your hand and knowing that you're being in some way mildly sassy.
Perfect. Well, Phil, thank you for dealing with Matt. What I enjoyed about this interview was at the end, you essentially interviewed yourself. I just kind of said, what question should you ask yourself, Phil? I think you'll interview going forwards, but it was an interesting experience. So I appreciate that one.
And we do have some really exciting guests lined up, right? I wanted to kick this one off. I know many of you don't have huge familiarity to all the areas of my work outside of what we do with hearing care. What I'd say to that too is if any of our Inner Circle members don't have copies of at least my 3 books in exactly what to say, exactly how to sell, and exactly where to start, I'd be delighted to get those out to you as gifts from me. In the coming months as well, we've got some killer guests that I'm going to be interviewing through 2021. And what I'd love for you to be able to plug into already, well, outside of the guests that I have lined up, is if you have needs or desires to have further knowledge or insight into the world of hearing care from a particular area of expertise, then I'd love to be able to have some of your editorial direction towards who we could bring onto the show for future episodes as well. So if you've got I would love to hear from somebody about blank type statement, get that into Ollie or myself, and we'll do everything we can to be able to make sure that we keep guests coming at a high caliber. And apologies of kicking you off the year with a subpar guest as myself.
Yeah, I think you did okay, Phil. So guys, I appreciate your time so much. And as always, anything you need, you know where we are. And go on and have yourself a great day.
Thank you, folks. See you all soon.
And there we have it. That is a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Hearing podcast. Make sure you subscribe to be the first to know when a new episode goes live. If you're feeling kind enough to share your experience and leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. And if you want to learn more, then go to www.orange-grey.com for article, guides and trainings specifically written for high-performing hearing care businesses. We look forward to speaking to you again soon.